Dr. Singhvi says, of course, there are subjective perceptions in how and, in what manner the Prime Minister took specific questions. There is a perception also that apart from the Prime Minister's, direct answer on Modi, there wasn't very much else that he actually said that, people didn't know about before. What to you was the big takeaway from this press conference?
Well, first, let me just spend a minute on the Modi question,
yes,
because the manner in which it arose is also important, right? I mean, the question was framed as the BJP accuses you of being weak. So his response was, and I think Nirmala ji should reflect on this, that the Prime Minister, I don't think was making a legal argument here that Modi is legally responsible or culpable for the riots. That's a separate thing that one can debate. And then she couldn't fish out the SIT report or the court ruling and say, look, you can't say this. Right? He was raising an administrative point that how can you claim to be a decisive and strong person when in the first week of March 2002, you ran a government that allowed 1,000 innocent people to be killed because of your weak, indecisive rule. So I think that's a fair political point to make. The only problem, I think, is that he didn't follow it through. And explain the logic, so that people could understand exactly what he was trying to say. And the other problem, of course, was that it got negated by his inability to answer a question on what he had done to give justice to the 1984 victims.
Yes.
When members of the Sikh faith, innocent citizens in Delhi were killed in large numbers during a Congress-led government. So I think that's a bit of a problem for him. But apart from that, the prime takeaway, I think, was the really very weak, shabby defense, ineffective defense that the Prime Minister mounted when it came to questions on the record of his government.
Yes.
Because on corruption, on inflation, he offered defenses that were quite unconvincing, perhaps even shocking in some sense.
Yes.
Particularly when he tried to suggest to make light of the corruption scams by saying these belong to UPA 1.
Yes.
And we're now in UPA 2, and the fact that we won that election means the public was clearly not so bothered about it as you are. I think all of this is going to be quite costly for the Congress,
yes,
because it suggests that no lesson has been learned from everything that we've seen and heard over the last 4 years.
Nirmala Sitharaman, would you like to respond to that, and then I'll go to Abhishek Manu Singhvi?
Well, the fact remains that as much as we may want to constantly say that 2002 there are issues for which Siddarth Varadarajan may want us to contemplate on, it's a different issue altogether, because if the Prime Minister is taking it up, and taking it up not so much for anything else but to show that he is put off by this individual, then in spite of you saying that no two wrongs would make one right, I would ask of him not just of Sikh riots but Kokrajhar. What has the Prime Minister, who is representing Assam, done about Kokrajhar? So I can always go on one-on-one on these sort of things. But the fact remains that an opportunity that the Prime Minister had in explaining about how his 10 years rule has done or undone things for this country has been lost, in the sense that he did not take the opportunity to explain on things in which he has to explain. He sought cover of the 2009 elections to say, I have nothing to answer on corruption. I would like to ask of him, he spoke about not being able to control inflation. He spoke about, high point being nuclear deal. Not 1 megawatt of power has been generated under the nuclear deal. Is the high point only to sign the agreement, but also to follow it up afterwards? He spoke about unemployment. His own ministry has, the Prime Minister has given award for skill development to Gujarat, whereas what the Prime Minister's office has done about skill development is in 2008, they form a council, then they form a board, then they appoint an advisor. Till 2013, nothing else has been done. So I would want to ask of him, if he really is talking about somebody as a disaster, who's performing and whose performance you are awarding with every year, year after year, you're giving him one or the other awards for Gujarat. You are unable to do anything here. And instead of expanding on these points, he has only tried repeatedly say, oh, Gujarat Chief Minister is a disaster for the country, whereas we are very good people, we are very soft, but we are unable to perform. I'm sorry. You're going around in circles.
Abhishek Manu Singhvi,
for the person who's proving it, you only have such, negative words to use.
Abhishek Manu Singhvi.